Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is equal parts fascinating and, honestly, just hilarious. It's this weird little intersection of digital media, our own expectations, and what happens when the underlying data we're looking at just takes a massive left turn, right into the bizarre. So let's jump right in. On the surface, we're starting with what looks like your typical high-octane YouTube photography tutorial. 5. The creator of our source material, a channel named Kyle Nutt, makes a really specific rapid-fire promise right out of the gate. Exactly 5 distinct ideas. Now, you know how it is in the world of online learning. Structure is literally everything. We as viewers crave those easily digestible lists, right? 5 is kind of the golden number for quick, focused comprehension. It sets this immediate expectation that, hey, we're going to be incredibly efficient here. 150 seconds, because it's not just the 5 ideas, it's the intense time constraint that makes the whole premise so compelling. 150 seconds. That's exactly 2.5 minutes to master a pretty complex photographic technique. If you do the math, that is just 30 seconds per idea. Talk about rapid-fire learning. It's a promise of absolute efficiency without a single second wasted. And that brilliantly illustrates the ultimate hook. The exact title of the source material we're looking at today is 5 long exposure photography ideas in 150 seconds. Now, long exposure photography? It's highly technical. We're talking heavy tripods, pitch black environments, capturing those flowing light trails from moving cars, or maybe smoothing out rushing waterfalls until they look like soft mist. It takes immense patience, so as viewers, we're completely anchored here. We are fully expecting this blistering, lightning-fast masterclass in shutter speeds, ISO settings, and aperture. But when we actually pull the underlying transcript data provided for this specific source, well, everything comes to a screeching, deadpan halt. The data simply reads, psychologul poate psychologul kunz skimp. Yep, that's it. That is the absolute entirety of our text data. There's no mention of cameras, no mention of light or tripods or shutter speed, just this completely inexplicable, unedited Romanian phrase sitting right there in the middle of what was supposed to be our fast-paced English tutorial. Comparing long exposure photography to psychologul. I mean, the sheer jarring contrast here is just wild to look at. On one hand, we've got our expectation, long exposure photography, a highly technical visual art form. On the other hand, the actual data reality we got, psychologul. It's like this cryptic digital artifact. Seriously, it's the digital equivalent of opening up a baking cookbook and finding an instruction manual for a submarine inside. How on earth does an English language camera tutorial generate this totally random Romanian transcript? Psihologul. In Romanian, it translates directly to the psychologist. So to really understand what we're looking at, we kind of need to put on our digital forensics hats and define this bizarrely out-of-place word that keeps popping up. Instead of being guided by an expert photographer showing us how to capture light trails, our text data has suddenly inexplicably introduced us to a mental health professional. You really can't make this stuff up. So let's look at the transcript breakdown. We literally need to deconstruct this fragmented anomaly word by word, treating this weird data glitch like some profound internet mystery. Number 1, we have psychologul, the psychologist. Number 2, poate, which translates to can or maybe. Third is kund, meaning when. And finally, number 4, scheme, meaning I change. Which brings us to the English translation, the psychologist can the psychologist when I change. So what happens when we actually stitch this literal, disjointed translation back together? We get that exact phrase. Listen to how utterly absurd that sounds. The psychologist can the psychologist when I change. It totally highlights the sheer ridiculousness of this text showing up as the foundational data for a fast-paced camera tutorial. Honestly, it reads way less like an instructional photography guide and much more like some fragmented poetry, or maybe an abstract philosophical thought spat out by a deeply confused AI. Changing the camera versus changing the mind. What if we tried to actually synthesize these wildly different elements? I know, it sounds crazy, but stay with me. Think about the contrast between changing a camera and changing the mind. Long exposure photography is quite literally about the act of changing the exposure, right? Leaving the camera shutter open for a longer period to let in way more light, fundamentally blurring the boundaries of time in a single still image. And shimbi, that final word in our strange transcript, it means I change. Could it be that this bizarre data glitch has accidentally handed us a metaphor? Like, is the physical act of changing our camera's exposure secretly mirroring a deep psychological shift? A moment where we're forced to pause, take in more light from our surroundings, and completely change our inner perspective? When we change our exposure, Are we really just changing ourselves? This brings us to a really fascinating endpoint for our explainer today. We started off looking for a 150-second shortcut to better photography, and instead, this bizarre data anomaly dragged us down a quiet, incredibly unexpected rabbit hole of translated technology. It kind of forces us to look beyond the technical stuff and dive right into the personal. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder. When we change our exposure, whether it's on a camera lens to capture a brand new image or in how we choose to view the world around us, are we really just changing ourselves?